Hi everyone. I'm here in Belgrade in the Kalemegdan Fortress Park. And right in front of me is the old, I want to say, Byzantine, then Turkish, then Serbian military fort that guarded the city for about 2,000 years. And they built a park around it. And it's really early. I didn't put the blinds down, and so I woke up at 6 and decided to come out and see what Belgrade is like early in the morning. And it's a very calm city, at least my neighborhood, which is just outside the center. And yeah, I'm just sort of wandering and reflecting on my time here, the time I've spent in the Balkans, what I might do when I get home, and my conclusion so far is that I don't have any conclusions. It feels really good to be back in Belgrade. I haven't been here since February when the city was very, very different. It was gray and cold and people were bundled up, and it just sort of like did not have the feeling that I have now, which is of being free and in shorts at 10 o'clock at night and sitting in cafes or restaurants outside and just kind of relaxing and enjoying, which people here do a lot. I've spoken to some folks in my program and they're like, they don't understand how there can be so many cafes with so much seating and so many people in them in the middle of the day without laptops or anything. And that's because they don't have jobs. And that's a really, really fascinating situation here, because everyone that I talk to complains about youth unemployment, which is really, really high. Like somewhere between 40, it's like 40, 50%, like it's really high. And I was speaking to one of my program organizers about this, and it kind of went without even, I'm surprised it took me this long to understand that not just that young people live at home until they get married, which they're delaying, of course, like a lot of people nowadays, until later, but that like parents don't want to kick their kids out of their house. Like I had this idea maybe that young people stay at home and their parents kind of like wish they'd get a job, you know, but it doesn't seem to be quite like that. There's sort of just the sense that parents don't want to kick their kids out of their house because it would be like mean or neglectful somehow, even if they're 30 and have a job. Even if they have a job, sometimes they stay at their parents' house. Because maybe their job isn't good enough to afford a whole apartment on their own, and the idea of living with roommates that are strangers that you met on Craigslist or wherever just seems anathema. I was telling one of these organizers that when I was in college, my parents were like, yeah, we're going to support you while you're in college. And then when I left school without finishing and didn't have any other sort of school plans, like, all right, well, you can go get a job. And I worked at Noah's Bagels, and at the time, living in the living room of a 2-bedroom apartment with two other people cost $500 a month in Berkeley, and I could afford that, and so I did. And that's the case here. People can definitely afford to room with folks, but they just don't, because it's like not as good as living at home with people who cook for you and don't ask very much. And seeing the parent side of that and not just the like young person side of it is actually really, really interesting, because older people complain to me all the time about young people being lazy and not working and not wanting to get a job. But of course what the kids are doing is entirely rational and sort of grows out of this culture of parents giving, and sort of the quality of the parent being proportional to the sacrifice they've made. And that feels like a really big cultural hurdle. because you have to earn a lot of money for it to be better to leave your parents' house in that kind of a situation. And so that kind of like frames so much of what I've been seeing and in my work. And not just that, like, people are always telling me we need to change the mindset. And I always understood that as we need to change the mindset of like young people to not want to seek safe, cushy government jobs where they don't do much, but instead become entrepreneurs and like make things. But it stems from their parents too, right? It's a cultural mindset that's broader than just like these kids are lazy today, or they want safe jobs instead of ambitious ones that could really make an impact. And that is so different than how I grew up in the United States. I somehow assumed my parents' view and attitude towards raising me and money and stuff like that was because they were from Serbia. But I realize now that it's actually a combination of Serbian and American. This idea that like, we'll support you through university, very Serbian. Like there was no question about that. I told my friend, by the way, that some parents don't do that in the States, even if they can, and people are like, my friend was like, what? Like, yeah. But then the American side of like, well, if you're not in school, like, out you go, get to work. And that's just another example of one of those things that being here has clarified for me, that because I'm a product of sort of a mix of cultures, it wasn't never clear to me, or I thought it was, but it actually wasn't clear to me which of those things that I grew up with were Serbian influenced, which were American or Canadian influenced, which were just my parents being, individuals. And this trip has really clarified a lot of things like that, because I see kind of the origins. And while things have changed here in the last 40 years, they are similar enough that I can sort of reconstruct kind of what I'm a product of, and how much of that is sort of these North American values and how much of it is like ex-Yugoslav Serbian values. And that's a really great outcome of this trip, and one of the goals, right? I came here explicitly with the goal of like finding myself and rediscovering my cultural heritage, and I didn't know exactly what that would mean, but it's happened for sure. Another thing that being here has done to me is it's made me more of a capitalist. I find that hard, when we're in the States, we look to the Northern European countries and countries with strong social welfare systems, and of course, like as liberals, like I'm all for that, and I still am, of course, but I also see here the ways in which free money can corrupt, not corrupt like in the form of corrupt government, because there's plenty of that, and that's a separate topic, but in the way that, like, for example, I've judged a number of startup competitions where students or young people compete to pitch the best startup idea, and the winner wins a prize, usually money, and I've seen how that money gets used, and it gets used like a gift, which is to say, at the best of cases, it gets used very carefully, to make the business last as long as possible, until they can maybe win another competition, or maybe make some money from customers or something. But that's extremely different from the way these teams would behave if what they had won was an investment, which is to say money with strings attached, money that they maybe don't have to pay back, but that came with the expectation that it would be used to advance their business and take risks and achieve whatever business goals they have. Essentially, they use the money to make more money. And that's, of course, the goal, right? If you're doing a startup competition, you want to create businesses, not students who make a living winning startup competitions. And so I've seen exactly that happen, and so all of these well-meaning institutions that sponsor competitions like that to help kids be innovative and to get the economy going and startups, yeah, like so much of that just goes nowhere because there isn't the right market incentive. And again, people are behaving rationally, but just the power of incentives, the power of money with strings attached to create a business, right? To drive you to create something where maybe your reputation is on the line. That's different, and I think that like the startup community here needs more of that. It needs more people who are willing to give money strings attached. And of course governments don't want to do that, right? Governments don't want to be in the investment business. They and so it's really tricky. But it's amazing to me how I'm like, no, don't give them money. That won't help them. Invest in them instead. Like, make them pay it back, or, you know, make sure they understand there's strings attached to it. It's funny to just hear myself say that and think that, considering that where I come from, I think that a lot of people who struggle just don't have enough money. And the government should just give them some. And of course I believe that too with people who are in poverty here as well, that there's a level below which you just need more money. But it's a funny, when faced with the problems of too much free money, like, my reaction surprised me. I've also become very aware of the power of institutions and of norms. I think especially given the current political situation in the States, with eroding institutions and political norms, I see a place that has far fewer ones, like far fewer and weaker ones. And everything from, you know, just the way that like parking is enforced, to the way that, you know, you have to pay the doctor or a professor extra to get proper care or pass an exam. Sort of corruption at that level of individual is pervasive here, and you just can't be successful and honest at the same time. Like, you really just can't. And I think that I have a crackpot theory that sort of erodes, that there's like knock-on effects of that in people's lives. And like the honest path will not lead to success here. And if you know that, then I think you're more likely to be dishonest and in lots of areas, right? And it's this self-reinforcing situation. And that's actually something kind of amazing about the States, that for the most part, and Western democracies too, I presume, you can be successful by following all the rules. You know, like, yes, if you're a member of an oppressed minority group, it's harder, and like all of those things. But it is possible for many people to like live decent lives doing the right thing most of the time, and they don't have to compromise themselves to get by. And that's not a given, like that's not automatic. That is a thing that you build as a society, and something that I'm here from a dystopian American future to tell you what it would be like if we lost that. And I really hope we don't, because it's a good way to live, and I think it's generally a good foundation to build on for like progress in the problems we do have. I haven't talked too much about Belgrade and my experience being in Serbia. I might save that for another video, but I have some time now to be a tourist in Belgrade because I finished my work. I had my last official meeting yesterday, and now I'm doing a few kind of on the side worky things, and then I have a giant report to write about the last 5 months. But apart from that, I'm done and free to spend time with family and friends and explore and just kind of consider where I am and what I want to do next. And I head back to the States in 11 days. I can't wait though. Thanks for watching. Bye.